Hey there, Twisters. Nick here, and today let's talk about Mike Grier. He has been introduced as the new general manager of the San Jose Sharks, a role that Doug Wilson held for 19 years. So certainly some big shoes to fill there. And so we'll talk about Grier, his professional background, some of the qualifications that Jonathan Becker and Joe Will were praising in today's press conference, and then sort of the work ahead for Mike Grier. I want to know your thoughts down in the comments below, Twisters. What do you think of the hiring of Mike Grier? What do you expect from him in the years ahead? So comment down below there. And if you're new here, Sharks fan or not, I do invite you to hit the red subscribe button down below and join our lovely hockey community here, the Twist Brigade. I am just one of many San Jose Sharks fans here, but we do cover the league at large, especially with big topics like this one here. Let's start with Grier's professional background. So he played in 1,060 NHL games from 1996 to 2011, primarily with the Edmonton Oilers and also the Buffalo Sabres, but he served some time also with the Washington Capitals and the San Jose Sharks. So he was a Shark for 3 years from 2006-07 to 2008-09. Those were certainly some prime Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau years. And this was really when I started getting into the Sharks quite a bit. And Grier was one of my favorite players out there because this guy would stick up for his teammates. He would drop the gloves. He was an excellent checking line winger, so he would kill a ton of penalties. The Sharks had the first ranked penalty kill in one of those seasons and the fourth in one of those seasons as well. A little bit of scoring upside at times, but certainly not somebody who could finish a breakaway for you. Not very often, but still, I really liked Mike Grier a lot, and he certainly did help sort of solidify the Sharks as a contender around that time as well. From 2014 to 2018, Grier worked for the Chicago Blackhawks as a scout, so he does have a Stanley Cup to his name in that respect. He also had several coaching stints in the United States Development Program for young women and for the national women's team. Then from 2018 to 2020, he worked for the New Jersey Devils as an assistant coach to Lindy Ruff. And then this past full calendar year plus, he was working in a hockey operations advisor role for Chris Drury, the general manager of the New York Rangers and a former teammate of his in Buffalo. Grier is 47 years old and grew up in the Boston area. He went to BU for college and played with a number of players who have gone on to have successful NHL careers as a player and as an executive. His father, Bobby Grier, worked in several NFL executive roles for a number of years and still is a consultant to Chris Grier, his son, who is the Miami Dolphins general manager. So what else made Mike Grier a fit for this role? Jonathan Becker did say this today, that it wasn't because he was a Sharks alumnus. That certainly, I think, does still play a factor, at least pushing him toward the top of the list. They did interview tons and tons of candidates, as it's been reported. But Grier, as Joe Will and Becker were saying, he had the best breadth of experience. He has seen the game from every point of view, which certainly does reflect what I was talking about earlier. He's worked in scouting, hockey operations, as a player, as a coach in various roles as well. So Grier does bring a lot to the table in the 25 years since he's was introduced to the NHL as a player. Becker also sees Grier as somebody who is capable of leadership even through difficult times. Becker almost opened the press conference with the fact that the last 3 years have not been particularly good. So Grier's the guy for that. He's well connected. He builds good relationships. Becker talked about how Grier is committed to culture and an ethic of saying what you mean and then doing what you say, to use that nearly verbatim. So what do the next couple of months look like for Mike Grier? So somebody had asked what's his top priority, and he's just said, hey, it's the draft. It's happening this week. So he's actually flying out to Montreal. That's a very far flight for people on the West Coast especially. And it seems that he's not really going to be making the decisions. It seems like they've already got most of that lined up, at least for the opening couple of rounds. He's just concerned about building the prospect pool and having some sort of role in that. That's just basically what I got from the press conference. Then after that, he's concerned about free agency. So the Sharks, they don't have too many big fish up for free agency this year. Mario Ferraro is somebody who still needs to be signed. But other than that, they already have most of their veterans on their contracts, and we'll talk about that later for sure too. And on top of that, Mike Grier has to find a new head coach because Bob Boughner and his staff had been laid off just before Grier was introduced as the new GM. It didn't seem like he had any word in that decision, but he does have to find somebody behind the bench. That is something that not every GM has to undertake as soon as they get into that sort of role. And especially you consider that this happens right after the draft and during free agency too. So it's very critical that they find somebody in the offseason. But at the same time, they were saying that there's no urgency for when a new head coach is hired. Grier said that to the media in the press conference. And yeah, that's just kind of another development that we'll have to follow here in the offseason. And then lastly, when it came to addressing sort of the overall roster build of the San Jose Sharks, look, they've missed the playoffs the last 3 years in a row, but just very consistently with what Joe Will has said before, or Jonathan Becker has said before, they're not going to be tearing this down. Not a full-on rebuild, not like Arizona, to use Grier's words there. So they're going to have to find a way to make improvements to the roster without getting into further cap hell or anything like that. So that's going to be a very difficult decision in the months ahead and the years. And lastly, what are my thoughts on the hiring of Mike Grier as the Sharks general manager? I mean, personally, just from a fanboy sort of perspective, I am pretty happy about this because I used to really like Mike Grier a lot, especially because while Thornton and Marlowe were making the flashy plays out there, and even Pavelski when he was a young whippersnapper out there, Grier was there to drop the gloves, block the shots, kill the penalties, fight. And so he certainly was beloved among many of my Sharks friends out there. Certainly love seeing him stay with the organization or come back to the organization after a number of years. Mike Grier is the first black NHL general manager in NHL history. That's a fantastic achievement. That's wonderful for the hockey community. Really admired what he had to say about that. He said, "I hope that my work is basically going to help in getting more minorities into roles like this." Well said from what I heard from him there too. And yeah, I like that they brought in somebody who, even though he has been a part of the organization, he's still going to bring a bit of a fresh perspective because he's been removed from the Sharks for 15 years. He's 47 years old, so that's fairly young. Somebody who can probably be a little bit more in tune with what is needed in today's NHL versus maybe someone more seasoned like Doug Wilson in the past. So I like all of that quite a bit. And somebody who does kind of preach culture or surrounding yourself with people who want to actually be present and working and building towards something, even if it's going to be, a multi-year process, which it will be for him. So I think that's all going well for Sharks fans. I like that. I'm a little concerned that, at least initially, I think Grier is going to be kind of handheld a little bit there, especially if I don't see a reason why Joe Will would leave the organization. I think that the Sharks have been dealing with an imminent rebuild, I think, for a number of years, and they're just slowly kind of peeling at that Band-Aid, and I don't think that they wanted to bring in somebody to rip it off. And I wouldn't expect a GM to do that right away when somebody like Grier has never served this actual role. So I think he's going to be kind of advised heavily and will be encouraged to lean on the advice that's given to him. But I'm hoping that, at least maybe 2 years from now, he says, hey, this is my job. I've had enough experience here to realize what this team needs. And so he can be more, I think, sort of forward thinking in that respect. The Sharks go into next season still in a tough cap situation, absolutely. Strapped with, no move clauses and modified no trade clauses for players like Erik Karlsson, 5 years, $11.5 million, no move clause. Vlasic, 4 years, $7 million annually, and that does become a modified no trade clause, I think, after next year, but still a full no move for this next year. Brent Burns, 3 years, $8 million, modified no trade clause. I know he's been subject to a lot of trade talk recently, and so I don't know if Grier is going to be the guy to get that done necessarily, but the Sharks might have been building up for a big move like that over the last few months. So that could be a possibility, and I could talk about that ad nauseum in a separate video. And Tomas Hertl's deal is kicking in now in 8 by 8.125 or something like that. So Grier knows that if he wants to improve the roster, it could be a little bit of trial and error because there's just only a small bit of wiggle room with the cap and with the opportunities that should be given to young up-and-comers. So one thing that you can't understate enough is that Grier should be very concerned with not only those players that the Sharks build in through the NHL draft, but really, what about one league underneath them with the Barracuda? He should absolutely have a say in sort of evaluating how effective they've been at developing talent recently. But really, over the last couple of years, the Sharks haven't seen much success from the minors and in terms of making it into the NHL and making it as a full-time, top 6 forward or top 4 defenseman. or a top goaltender. They just haven't. There's been a huge void there. Mario Ferraro would be an exception to that. Think about how Joe Pavelski, when he was a rookie, was a couple years into the Sharks development programs, Worcester and whatnot. Then he comes into the Sharks, boom, instant top six impact. Logan Couture, boom, instant top six impact. So there's been a big gap there, I think, in terms of drafting and developing consistently well. And so I think Grier has to absolutely pick up on that pretty quickly. The Sharks do have some good prospects in their system. It's all about, creating that sort of balance between, we bring in an experienced player who can add some impact without having to shape things for our cap situation going forward. And at the same time, we keep a roster spot available for Ozzy Weisblatt or Tristan Robbins or Daniil Gushchin or something like that. So Grier is going to have to really make some difficult decisions about that because, as I alluded to earlier, the Sharks are struggling to acquire season ticket holders and retain them. I reported on that, or I made a video about that a year ago, how since 2014, it's really been tough sledding for the Sharks financially when you look at ticket revenue. So they have a lot of work to do there, right? Can you ice a team like last year's team and expect your ticket sales to go up? I'm not entirely sure if that's possible because it's not a traditional hockey market, and we've seen over the last several years that people aren't as enthused about coming to SAP Center to watch the product the Sharks have put out there. So Grier is going to have to find a way to change that. I don't think that it's going to happen this upcoming season, but like I said, in a year or two, I hope that's when he says, okay, I think I've got a feel for this right now. And you know what? I know we used to do things this way. We're going to do things this way now. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does, but my expectations will be very modest of him going forward for the upcoming season. Nonetheless, I hope that we have some exciting stories to report on here on Twisted Wrister Hockey, especially as it pertains to the San Jose Sharks coaching search. So anyway, what are your thoughts on the hiring of Mike Grier? Congratulations, Mike. It's great to have you as part of the San Jose Sharks franchise. Excited to see what you can do over in Teal Town. So, hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. I'll see you around for more San Jose Sharks talk and coverage of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you, Twisters, so much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Nick, and I'll catch you later. Ciao.